how do you prove that it was the result of an abortion? Who looks at those records to make that determination?
Well, ultimately, the Attorney General.
So we have to open up a woman's medical records so that the Attorney General can look at that.
We would.
Are there no potential privacy, HIPAA violations there? We're going to make all of that information public?
It was like the very first question, and I was like, what the fuck is Edmund saying? But
why
like, this seems good for us.
Come into this, the AG should,
because he just has, because Edmund just has no idea.
Criminal. Like we've been doing the criminal stuff for so long. They're confused. They think
that is true. They don't know the difference between civil and criminal.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that's probably the most like generous, like interpretation of how Edmonds got to that answer, right? And because he's been talking to the Attorney General, Liz is in favor of this bill, so he's like, like, well, the Attorney General's going to decide whether somebody had an abortion. And like, I was like at home being like, keep saying what you're saying, man. Keep saying that, because that's batshit crazy.
Welcome to Seriously, the podcast that dives into the baffling.
We can't send them to a prison where there's animals, where there's livestock.
The ridiculous.
Like omelets better than sex.
And downright unbelievable political climate in red states like Louisiana.
So we can't go there. There's no vegan jail.
Seriously.
Welcome to Seriously, your good news podcast. Again, I'm here with Ellie. I'm Michelle, by the way.
Yes, and I'm Ellie. And there is good news. The good news is the legislative session is over.
Oh my God, I know. We're excited to be joined today by Morgan Lamandre, who now is kind of the rock star of the podcast because you've been featured so many times.
It's true.
So we're happy to have you, Morgan.
Thank you. I'm excited to come on, especially since I am obviously a follower and I subscribe. So I love it.
Yes. One of the many
thousands and thousands of listeners that we're reaching every single week. Yes, Morgan, really. we don't really know, but I like to say that.
It's the end of the session. The session ended on Thursday. We are going to do a wrap up, as we promised last week, on several bills and get into, how things ended with some of the stuff that our listeners have been following with us. But before we do that, we want to talk about our Seriously moments this week. So, Morgan, as our special guest, what was your Seriously moment?
So my Seriously moment was when, and at first, of course, I thought it was fake, but then everything is something that you think is fake these days. But when apparently Trump had issued some sort of social media post about their immigration policies are too harsh on farmers and, those that work in hotels, and they're going to have to start scaling back. And it was because they're punishing people who come here to work hard and they're not criminals or something along those lines. And I definitely was like, seriously, that you're first off, what do you think immigration is in general that you keep talking about? But okay, seriously.
Yeah, I was similarly confused by that. And that's actually dovetails well into my Seriously, which is that, before and during the statements that he made being like, man, shit, I guess we need farmers. I guess we need people to work in hotels and whatever. And I guess it turns out that some of those people are undocumented. He said something like they don't have the right papers or whatever, so minimizing it all of a sudden. But that was at the same time that he had sent the military and the National Guard into LA to try to do whatever the fuck, defend ICE raids and that sort of thing. So I don't really know. I haven't heard what has come of these other seemingly reasonable statements about not going after people. But my Seriously is that, this past week, the National Guard was deployed to LA without the permission of the governor. First time since, the National Guard was deployed in Alabama without the permission of the governor when the guard was being used to, help escort children into schools being desegregated. This time, of course, like to protect like unlawful ICE raids, like just lawless government activity with more lawless government activity.
If somebody was about to raid one of his hotels.
Yeah, exactly.
All of a sudden.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm sure there's like 3 farmers that own all of the farms in California at this point, since there's like no small farms left. So maybe like that guy called him and was like, hey man, you do know if you take all of our workers away that you're not going to be able to get any tomatoes down at Mar-a-Lago. Right. Like whatever, like the Russian salad, whatever the 1980s foods are that they're serving at Mar-a-Lago. Like those rely on iceberg lettuce, man. Don't you know? But on a not funny note about this, then I have some good friends in LA and was asking them, how are things going? How do things feel? And I mean, the one thing, of course, being that like the protests were largely peaceful. There really was, of course, like no problem that Trump needed to come in and solve, but that the ICE raids are devastating. Like one of the things I heard yesterday was my friend from a close friend who works in the welfare office in LA said that ICE agents had come in like unannounced without warrants, et cetera, and just seized all of the adult immigrants that were there and left all of the children. And so there was a call that was going out for anybody who's already been pre-screened for foster care to volunteer to take in these children. And at that point, they didn't have a full head count for how many of these children there were. So, we have been talking a lot, of course, this session about abuse and trauma, and Morgan, that's, your area of specialty. And I think it's worth remembering that this is like government sponsored and government perpetrated abuse and trauma on American families, or, on families who are in America. And it's really upsetting.
For sure. And I think just not knowing probably where your children are, and then just being in those spaces, it's sort of right for all the sexual violence that will likely occur, whether through our government, because there are those that use their positions of power to prey on other people, but then also just for the kids. I mean, again, it goes back to this idea, which I'm sure we'll get into, of we're pro-life, where you're not pro-people, like you're not pro-humanity. And I just don't know when we'll see the day where people actually care, or I think I can curse on here, give a shit about people. What's your seriously moment, Michelle?
Oh, so mine is more local. I mean, obviously I've been thinking a lot about both of the things that you two brought up, but I think my significant seriously moment this week was recognizing at the end of all of the opposition, the back and forth, the efforts that we and so many others made on HB 575, that in the end, we ended up having the same position as the right to life, which was adopt the amendments. And we were using the same talking points. That just blew my mind. I was like, this is probably the last time this will ever happen, but it was so hilarious to me.
It's true. You're talking about on concurrence, right?
Right.
Yeah. Well, they needed to save face, and be like, hey, vote for the amendments. Like, we're in favor of the amendments. I told you separately, I think they were just very tired at that point and ready to be done with it. But yeah, it's sort of, they're always kind of like geniuses in their deceptive PR. And to me, I think there's also, that's a little bit of it. Like, oh no, this all went really well. We're perfectly
so
happy.
Reasonable. Look what we did. Yeah. We have all these amendments.
Concur with the amendments that we fought tooth and nail to prevent from getting on the bill. Yeah.
Unbelievable. Yeah. Just to have the same talking points and be sending the same messages out as the Louisiana right to life was hilarious to me.
It really, outwardly, like, people don't understand not living in Louisiana, where that's a win.
Yeah.
And I think that, again, you have to sort of compromise a little bit, not yourself, but I mean, really, we're just always trying to minimize as much harm as possible. And if that results in us at the very end, in agreement, or I wouldn't say in agreement, on the same page in terms of what we are asking the legislature to do, which was to concur, it feels really weird, but again, so be it, I guess, for now. We weren't,
absolutely.
We weren't concurring with the idea of this bill going into law in general, but it could have been worse.
That's right.
It really could have been worse.
Well, let's dive into the details then, because I mean, what the bill ended up being, considering where it started, is so significantly different. And
I mean, just to put a finer point on it, we'll get into the details, but basically the right to life, the proponents of this like extremely misguided and dangerous proposal in terms of a change to the law, got almost nothing that they wanted in the end. And that's because Republicans, people on their own side, realized that this was an extremely misguided and dangerous proposal, and that in general, these people are just going too far. So that doesn't happen every session, as we know. A lot of times they're dangerous and misguided proposals. People think seems fine.
I mean, and Ellie, obviously, I haven't analyzed it from the legal perspective of what it was versus now, but it seems like the biggest things that they got were longer prescriptive period, longer preemptive period, if there was one before, I'm not really sure. And then also the statutory damages and certain caveats for damages. But they kept making it as if they couldn't, somebody could not sue out-of-state doctors before. I don't know. Did that change any? Truly?
So, I mean, there is still a fair amount of ambiguity in what the law does, but it hasn't changed very much at all, is the reality. It's that the current law says you can sue someone who performs an abortion. And so their point was like, that's not exactly how abortions are happening now. It's not necessarily like someone performing it. They may be, sending pills or whatever. So now there's some quote substantially facilitates language in the bill, but that's dramatically narrower than any of this concept was to get the bill potentially impose liability beyond a person who performs the abortion. It went through like 50 different iterations and all kinds of confusion, as we're going to hear. Even when the bill was being presented on the Senate floor, where nobody really knew what it said. Like the questions on it are like older versions, I mean, it's, just like a total mess. But in the end, then it's people who could be held liable as somebody who performs or who substantially facilitates an abortion. But that substantially facilitates language has been narrowed significantly.
So it basically does mostly only target people out of state who are mailing the prescriptions, or those companies that are, the online pharmacy companies that are coordinating the sale.
That's right. If it is really for the purpose of an abortion, as opposed to sending the drugs, to a hospital for postpartum, hemorrhaging or any other sort of legal purpose.
Well, I want to say a couple of things about this. This bill has never made me want to advocate so strongly for a change in the legislative rules about the process. So first one, when there's been an amendment, you need to re-engross. I don't care which side it starts on or which side it goes on. Re-engross the bill so we can see what it looks like once the amendments were added. The second thing is do track changes. Like, don't give us the amendments where it's, line 1, page 2, insert this, because especially if you're not truly going to follow, which they don't have to follow, the 24-hour rule about posting the amendments in advance. Right. We know we experienced that. And then the other thing is abolish the digest. The digest is not law. And if one more person quotes the digest, I get that it's hard for some people to follow, But the problem is that our legislators don't read the bills that they're about to pass, and they read the digest. And the digest does not have to be what the law is. And I was actually talking to one of our former senators who's a lobbyist now, and he told me he would read those digests and go to the staff attorneys and be like, this is not what it says. You need to fix it. So if there's that much influence to be able to put, change the digest just based on what a legislator wants, I fear it's pointless. It's not the law. And I think it overwhelmingly confuses people. So
yeah. And just to follow up from one of our earlier podcasts on this, because the digest is helpful, but it's only helpful if it's accurate, as you're saying. And also the only reason really that you need it is if it's not clear what the bill actually says. So yeah, we did not know. Michelle and I talked about, on an earlier podcast that we were like, could not wait to get the final version of the bill, to see it with the amendments. And we did like the homework project for people to like, see if you can figure out what this fucking bill actually says now. But we didn't even realize that like, that was never going to happen with a bill that originates in the House that gets amended in the Senate. Then that's never happens. They never
incorporate the amendments.
On the way to the Senate.
So it's only the House. They re-engross bills on the floor of the House. Like Michelle and I had this conversation. I had this conversation with like a couple of reporters in town that like cover the session regularly. Like, how did we not know this?
I told you, huh?
A couple people started telling. Yeah, you did. But it's batshit crazy. It's literally like,
I don't want you to know. Back in the day, there wasn't even post of, there was no website. Like, so I can't even imagine like.
Oh my God, it just must have been insane. Yeah, but so just so that listeners really understand. In the end, what the senators who were supposed to be voting on this bill had was the bill that came over from the House, and then they had the sheet of the delete line, blah, 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 and insert blah, 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 amendments, 28 of them from the committee in the Senate. And then there was
in a separate document.
And then in a separate document. And then there's now a third document with all the floor amendments, which we're going to get into the details of those. But that document was amending the committee amendments.
At times,
a lot of them were.
It's referring to both. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like amend this committee amendment. So you have to look at what the committee amendment said, and then you have to see what then of the bill that committee amendment was. It's completely.
And if you don't pull up the right one, like I was like, I have no idea if they're amending the re-engross bill or if they're amending what should be the bill now since the Senate committee amendment. So it was very confusing.
It was crazy.
Again, like
this is totally unnecessary. There's all of these versions exist, right? Like on the website. So, if somebody wants to look and see, what was the bill like before it was changed in the Senate committee? That document exists. Like it wouldn't have to be like, well, that gets erased. Right. But just do an up-to-date version, like a current draft of the bill, basically, as opposed to one where you have to figure out, what does the bill currently say? And then, wait, what would it say if these amendments that are currently being proposed or added? The thing that's important, this is obvious to all of us, but like these bills are coming up very quickly on the floor for debate. New proposed amendments, the ones, to be offered on the floor, are not posted ahead of time. So like the Senate, let alone, people like us who are trying to figure out, what does this say? Do we think this is a good idea? Like the actual people voting on this have like 5 seconds really to like look at it before they decide, like, are they objecting? Is this going to be debated? And all told, even with a bill like this that was very controversial, it'll maybe be discussed on the floor for like 5 minutes, maybe 10.
Well, and when we went to the Senate side and we're on the Senate committee, obviously, I was really pissed about not having those amendments because they were so extensive. And just that was one of the things that like just really got me about this bill, the unprofessionalism that we had to deal with, that I'm not like at
Welcome
all.
to the party, Morgan, as I've been saying.
And honestly, like the deliberate lies, when it went from the House to the Senate, for your listeners, they added something that was under an exception to lawsuits. Like basically you can't get sued if you are an advocate for sexual assault survivors or a mental health professional, as long as you do not substantially facilitate the procuring of an abortion or an abortion inducing drugs. Well, everyone thought that that was like a good thing.
Everyone but you and me.
And I'm like, read the language. It's not an exception. It's actually broader than what the scope is. Like it's confusing because they're putting it under exceptions, but what it directly means is if you tell anybody about a website where they can get even neutral information about where to get a legal abortion, that is you helping to substantially facilitate the procuring of an abortion or an abortion-inducing drugs. It doesn't even have to be a website that you're ordering drugs on. It's just one to like tell you where you can get one legally. Well, I just like very directly, and I'm like this 5'0" girl, like, tell me why. Just say directly, what is your end game? What is your goal here? And
they wanted a gag order in there. They wanted the gag order in there.
For sure, they did, but it's like, just say that. Like, if we can just be honest, like I'm all about honesty, right? Like, yes, Star, if somebody comes and they're asking, you know, about different options, we do refer them to I Need an A. No, we do not carry around abortion pills and give them out to everyone, because that is what I was told was being conveyed to people as a reason for us needing an exception, which I find hilarious. So we need an exception because you want us, you think that we're giving abortion pills away and you want us to, no.
They never fucking thought that. They knew the whole time exactly what Star is doing, which is legal and First Amendment protected activity, the same as, you know, many doctors in the state, the same as many advocates in the state, just in terms of referring people to information.
Well, and I was like,
legally and medically accurate information, yes, and often about where you can get a legal abortion out of state. Like they knew that.
I was just like, so you're saying we need an exception. So then why not an exception for librarians? Why not an exception for teachers? Why not an exception for this? Like, let's go with veterinarians. People were like, I don't understand why you don't like want an exception, because it's not one. It's basically saying, by the way, sexual assault victim advocates, you actually have further possibilities for liability if you even refer somebody to a website. And it's like, this is the kind of unprofessionalism that I'm like, stop doing this dance. Just say exactly what you mean and mean what you say. Like, just let's be adults. And I think that the reason that they act this way is because they know they can't get certain things in, because people are like, oh, maybe that's too extreme. Right. But like, I'm sorry, nobody is going to admit that what really I think is the next goal is you can't even go to another state. And I think that even for people who consider themselves conservative would be against that. I mean, what are we going to do now? Like, to cross state borders, we're checking to make sure people aren't pregnant. But I think that's absolutely, we're going to have pregnancy register. These are the goals because they're not stopping. And I think this is where you have to ask your listeners. It's like, I didn't think they were coming for me. No, they're coming for everyone. Like, and I have a 3-year-old daughter, and heaven forbid, like, anything ever happened to my daughter. But I truly was thinking they want it to be to where if I'm a resident in Louisiana and I took my daughter out of state, should something happen to her, and obviously she's 3, but they want to criminalize me. They want to criminalize that type of conduct. So why is it worth it for us to even remain in Louisiana with like the constant like restrictions of freedom? And obviously we went a little viral, Ellie, with the thing about postpartum hemorrhage, which I know I was just like, I couldn't hold back my facial reaction.
That's in the life of the outrageous things that have happened with this bill. That's like quaint. And feels like it was like 5 years ago, like good old Chairman Muscarello with his like question that doesn't understand how female bodies work or how science or medicine works. Like,
and we were in the middle of talking, but it was like I was just caught off guard. Like, wait, did he really just ask you this question, and after you had
I
responded,
was also like, what? We've come so far. And yeah.
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 That gave me a laugh I needed during that crazy time.
Yeah, I think that your point is well made. One, they're completely dishonest, and I think this session really showed that. They had to spend an enormous amount of political capital on this bill and ended up getting very little of what they wanted.
That's correct.
But I'm glad that they introduced the bill in the batshit fucking crazy form that they did, because now we know what they wanted. And I think that your point about travel is a really good one. And it's something that Ellie and I talked about earlier in the session, I think on the podcast, was this also really seemed like an attempt to legislate basically a gag rule, or, some sort of consequence for sharing information that wouldn't be state imposed.
That's
so
right.
wouldn't necessarily be a First Amendment violation, but would have such a chilling effect that it essentially would gag people from telling people where they could go, even to get a legal abortion out of state. So it's very clear what they want to do. I mean, they really showed their hand this session with this bill and with the coerced abortion bill.
Yeah. But yes, I do think it's worth pointing out that, also with the coerced abortion bill, that some of these just like very, very dangerous and unpopular ideas from the past that they've been trying to bring up, such as like that mandatory reporters are mandated to report any sort of, information that is given to them, even about adults that, were raped, or say that somebody, coerced them into having an abortion, like all of those kinds of things. They've tried that before. They tried it again. That did not work. They've tried before to give causes of action to other family members. They tried that again. It did not work. Like this was like some of like their greatest hits of very bad ideas from like the past decade that they tried again. And, newsflash, those ideas are still very dangerous and very unpopular. So that was one of the big wins and big takeaways for me this session, was that, a lot of this stuff, like, just because they think that they can do whatever they want around there, they actually can't do whatever they want around there. Some of the more outlier proposals, yes, like, are still, cooler heads do still prevail. So, yeah.
Well, and if I could just make one point, though, about the coerced abortion bill, the way it started out, there were all these different ways you could be criminalized, essentially. And one of them was just about like financial and those types of related things. And it was like, I want to come back with bills dealing with sexual assault that says, if you threaten to evict me out of my house, and I agree to have some sort of sexual contact with you. We hear all the time from, shitty landlords and all that do this to women who have children. I'm going to evict you on the streets if you don't, perform oral sex on me, or whatever the case may be. And they do that, and then they report later, and it's, well, you consented. So it's interesting parallels. Because also, if I would have come there with a bill that says you don't have to prove any damages, anybody can sue just for alleging a rape, people would look at me like I was crazy. Yet, in these circumstances, it's not looked the same way.
No, they have a very specific idea of the definition of coercion that's useful to them in this circumstance, although is too broad for any circumstance, quite frankly, particularly when you're dealing with the criminal law. But they would be like, well, that sounds crazy, Morgan, if it were something about people actually like being sexually, abused or coerced.
Yeah. Okay. So we've talked already a little bit about the amendment to do what you were asking for, Morgan, which is to take out this gag rule that was masquerading as an exception for mental health professionals and sexual assault survivor advocates. In the end, you were able to talk to Senator Mizell about this, and she really understood what the problem was.
Just like for, in sort of the tying the two things together about people not being able to see what the bill says and then this sort of purported exception, like those things like really collided when we were trying to talk to people about this, that they didn't understand what the bill currently said in terms of substantially facilitates. And so when Morgan and I were trying to tell, you know, lawmakers and other people that like this quote exception is broader, it's like actually saying that these people can be held liable for conduct that is broader than the general liability provision. It was really hard to even get people to understand that because you couldn't just look at the goddamn language of the bill and even see what we're talking about. But yes, luckily Senator Mizell, who you have a long relationship with, was able to understand this quite easily.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to play Senator Mizell introducing this bill or this amendment.
Members, this amendment simply removes a section that gives, in order to give an exception to an advocate for sexual assault survivors or a mental health professional who provides counseling or support services in a manner that does not substantially facilitate procuring an abortion or abortion-inducing drugs. And the reason for that is to keep the confidentiality and the information shared from the survivor to the advocate out of this bill.
Right. So I thought that was an excellent, like, one, simplification. Morgan, what did you think?
As a lawyer, I was like, that's not legally how I would put it. But I think that it was so hard, like in explaining this to Senator Mizell, she's like, everyone's saying like, this is an exception. I don't understand. I was like, well, don't give us the exception. Put us on the same playing field as anyone else who would potentially be, you know, sued under this bill. She knows how to read a room. Okay. Yeah. And I think that that was the way of explaining it in a sense that maybe like little kindergartners could, you know, understand.
Yeah. These people are like dumber than your average kindergartner. I can tell you that. They're dumber than my 3-year-old nephew. He's pretty smart, but yeah.
And I do want to be very clear. Obviously, this was not about shielding Star or any other advocates from, you know, any conduct that would be potentially suable under the law, because Senator Mizell has been very direct with me and open. She identifies as pro-life. She does not want abortion. But I do think that she gets the part where we got to do things that will prevent the need for abortion. I believe she thinks that we are not doing enough to even prevent us from getting to the point where women feel they have to.
Well, and I think that actually her explanation, all jokes aside about kindergartners, I think that her explanation of the bill her amendment gets to the heart of that like she understands that survivors need safe spaces to get advice and to talk about what's going on with them, and that, you know, those conversations could involve abortion, you know, right. and where one can get a legal abortion. So I think that's important. And yeah, I mean, also, Morgan, I mean, it's 100% accurate that all the amendment does to remove that provision is to put Star and other advocates for survivors and other mental health professionals on the same playing field as everybody else. Just like go to the general provision, whatever this weird fucking language is that you guys have decided to insert, you know, at the end of the day, that only applies to these people is stupid. Just apply the same thing to them as to everybody else.
I think it was so hard for people to understand because they were looking at it in the same way as a pharmacist or a doctor, where obviously, depending on the doctor, that conduct could be legal or illegal, I guess, under this law. But ironically, I mean, you know, it's just
No, not ironically. There is no conduct that you or somebody in your position could be doing that is illegal. That's the difference, right?
That's what I meant.
Like, correct. Is that because regardless of referring people to information, whether it's in state or out of state with how somebody can get an abortion, that is not something that is illegal, and it is First Amendment protected. So this was, again, as we talked about earlier, just trying to invade, like trying to chip away at people's ability to provide that type of information to other folks because they're worried about being sued. As Michelle knows, I said all like throughout the course of messaging on this bill that it's creating liability for conduct that is not only not illegal, but not wrongful, conduct. So, yeah.
Well, to that point, I want to play Senator Duplessis also introduced an amendment, and it did not pass, but it was a critical amendment, and you can kind of help explain it.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, the purpose of this amendment is to make it clear in the bill that there be actual causation and damages. That is the purpose of the amendment, because right now in the bill, it's not clear. There's no causal language in the amendment, as well as no proof of being able to provide for damages, actual damages. That's what the amendment would do.
I'm just giving everybody a second to read the amendment. Hold on. Okay, I see no questions on the amendment. Is any... Wait. Hold on. We're getting the amendment situated back here, folks. Hold on one second. Let's work through this real quick. Well, not real quick, actually.
Maurice's face, he was like, okay. I mean, like, oh shit, let's give everybody a chance to read this.
Normally, they just like, here's an amendment, any objections, no objections, okay, let's go.
Senator Edmonds had proposed a bunch of amendments that dramatically changed and narrowed the bill. So those were things like taking out the quote unquote dad as somebody who can sue, taking out the language about that it could be somebody who quote causes an abortion, which people have heard me bitch about nonstop throughout this bill, that I don't know what it means, but I know it sounds really broad and vague. So that's bad. Putting
something
in
else with doctors too.
That's right. Yeah. Keeping the Mizell amendment, that licensed Louisiana doctors couldn't be sued, and keeping the amendments from the committee about that malpractice protections would apply in most instances. So dramatic changes that were made to the bill after a shit ton of cajoling and probably coercion, as they loosely throw that term around to mean anything that's trying to persuade somebody to do something that they hadn't really wanted to do in the first instance. So those amendments had already gone on the bill. And then Senator Duplessis, who is we just should say 100% is our greatest champion in the Senate. I can't say enough nice things about Senator Duplessis. He's willing to take stands on these issues that are really important, and he's the only fucking person that's willing to do that.
Yeah.
The truth is the truth. So the amendments that he was proposing that we just heard were other things that would have been really important, that the bill does not actually require real causation or real damages having been suffered in the kind of way that every other tort statute in the history of America reads. The language of the amendment and the way that he's describing it is extremely reasonable and oh yeah, duh kind of amendment to a bill like this that I'm sure some of them, including possibly Cameron Henry, at first were well, was this a drafting error? They probably just meant to include the language caused by, that you can only sue somebody for damages that were caused by this, whatever conduct. But yeah, they're oh wait. Because when amendments are proposed on the floor like this, there's a short period of time for someone to object. If there's no objection, the bill gets amended. So Cameron Henry's oh no.
The fact that it was Duplessis proposing it, that people got suspicious.
That's right.
I think that if you see, there were some what were called consensus amendments introduced by Edmonds. There wasn't any question to Senator Mizell's
That's right.
amendment. And it's just this idea that there's just this overt distrust. And I don't know if I've told you all this, but in 2023, when we needed to do some adjustments to the termination of parental rights bill for if a child was conceived through rape, there was no support for that bill initially. Even it was because it was Jason Hughes' bill. And then we did get Liz Morrell to support that bill. And, you know, there's a reason she supported that bill. Everyone has a story they don't say out loud, right? And it wasn't until she sort of put her credibility to it that then later down the road, the Right to Life supported. And it's like, just read the bills. If you can't independently make decisions and see where things are, and they don't want to support bills for, even if it's a good piece of legislation by somebody they deem to be, I guess, evil. And that's the other thing that gets me, this idea that people are evil.
That's in my opinion, at least, dangerous rhetoric to be in politics. No different than the constant Jesus talk and all the Bible study at the Capitol from our last podcast, which, meeting people where they are is different than, like, you know, the Capitol becoming a place where we're talking about the devil and Jesus as if we're in Bible study.
That happens often.
Yeah, it does. It does. Yeah.
When Audrey started bringing up that stuff, I was just like, oh no, I knew something was going to happen.
Well, I have to say, because after listening to the podcast from last week, I do appreciate Audrey trying to meet people where they are. Y'all are coming at this from a religious perspective. I also have looked into this from a religious perspective. I thought that was smart, and I had no problem with that. It was then when the rabbit trail of like 10 minutes of Rep. Moore beginning the Bible study is where I was like, okay, what the fuck? But back to this bill then. You're right. Just by the mere fact that it's Senator Duplessis who is proposing this amendment, then it's like Spidey sense is like going up, you know? And then I think, honestly, on top of that, on its face, the words that are being proposed and the explanation given for them is like, oh shit, like this sounds really, yeah. And like maybe like a problem that needs to get solved with the bill. Like this might've just been a mistake. Whoa, slow down, cool the jets. Where is Ben Clapper? Where's my man Ben? Where's my man Ben?
Decisions can be made without him. And then the opposite is true, where if you go to them, they're like, well, the author makes the decision.
So yeah, no, they get their shit together fast enough, which doesn't have to be very fast, because like all of a sudden the Senate starts moving in slow motion. They just need to look like, where's my man Ben? Where's my man Ben? Let's keep moving.
Senator Edmonds, on your objection.
All right, thank you, Mr. President. I want to reiterate that this bill has gone through numerous, on both House and Senate side, numerous sides of reviewing and so forth. I think it's unclear for the damage pursuant to this section. This damage is caused is very difficult to identify, and I'm going to object on that measure.
Again, this is a very straightforward amendment. It's very clear. It's just providing for causation. We are creating a cause of action with this bill that I'm going to have some questions on and some thoughts on. But as it relates to this amendment, all it's doing is providing language that there be a clear cause of action and that there be damages, that you have to be able to prove that. Because right now, under the bill, you cannot. So that's the purpose of the amendment.
Thank you for laughing at that too. Yeah, I'm glad we laughed at the same part, Morgan, because I laughed at it in real life when this was happening to her. I'm like, oh yeah, no, because Edmund just said, he's like, well, I mean, it's going to be hard for people to prove damages for this, so that's why we shouldn't.
I am going to make the same argument for when I bring up my, civil justice for sexual assault survivors bill again. I didn't say you didn't have to prove that there was damage. I will say that. So that maybe I should start that broad. Also, everyone can bring a claim. Your parents, They
didn't have to cause anything to you, and you didn't have to suffer any damages to be able to sue them. Like the most basic things that are literally unconstitutional in terms of imposing liability on people. So yeah, that still did slip through the cracks in the end with this bill, to be clear. But the rest of it has been narrowed to such an extent that the ability for somebody to use that for the really sort of just dangerous, abusive, or fraudulent purposes that this cause of action was intended to be used for when it was conceived of have been limited. That's, I think, the takeaway.
Okay, I'm going to get us back on track, and we are going to go into asked and answered, but we're going to play some clips from the question and answer on the floor between Senator Duplessis and Senator Rick Edmonds.
And Senator Duplessis, our only senator who asked questions. And I would like that to be noted.
Yeah, for the permanent record. Okay,
Yes.
Here we go.
How does one go about proving that an abortion actually took place? If the fetus did not survive, how do you prove that it was the result of an abortion? Who looks at those records to make that determination?
Well, ultimately, the Attorney General.
So we
would
have to
prosecute.
open up a woman's medical records so that the Attorney General can look at that.
We would.
Are there no potential privacy, HIPAA violations there? We're going to make all of that information public?
What in the world
Wait,
is
I
he
don't
talking
remember
about?
this.
No, I remember this. This was because this was like the very first question. And I was like, what the fuck is Edmund saying? But
Why
like,
did
this
the
seems
AG
good for
even
us.
come into this? The AG should,
Because he
what
just
is
has,
going on?
because
They all
Edmund just
think that
has
this is
no idea.
criminal. Like we've
Yeah,
been doing the
right.
criminal stuff for so
Right.
long. They're confused. They think
That is true. They don't know the difference between civil and criminal.
I mean, I think that's
Oh, dear
that's
God.
probably the most like
generous.
generous like interpretation of how Edmonds got to that answer, right? And because he's been talking to the Attorney General, so he's like, like, well, the Attorney General's going to decide whether somebody had an abortion. And like, yeah, I was like at home being like, keep saying what you're saying, man. Keep saying that because that's batshit crazy. No one wants that like the Attorney General's getting people's medical records to decide for a civil cause of action, whether it kind of looks like somebody had a miscarriage or it kind of looks like somebody had an abortion. That's crazy. That's not how it would work. As we all know, like in a person's medical records, it could look the same whether you had an abortion or was a miscarriage. The question of how does one know, or the law figure out, a judge figure out, was this an abortion or was this a miscarriage, is a live issue here.
Mhm.
And the answer is not that the Attorney General is going to look at people's, thank God that that's not the answer, right? Is that the Attorney General is then going to comb through people's medical records. This was, I was very pleased with this start, honestly, to the question and answer session on this bill.
I don't have words.
We're going to go on to the next one because the answer to this is also wrong.
Who has substantially facilitated an abortion? Is that defined?
Substantially facilitates means administering, prescribing, dispensing, distributing, marketing, advertising, promoting, or selling an abortion-inducing drug.
God.
I was also pleased with this answer.
To the point that we were making earlier, they had not incorporated any of the amendments. And so the person that was at the podium tasked with explaining the bill to his colleagues did not know what the amended version of the bill actually said. So he is reading off a definition from 4 weeks ago.
I was so pleased though, because like he's reading the definition that is worse for them. Yes. The broader definition.
And they still would have supported it though. That's the thing.
Well, that's all fine good, but like, I mean, their whole point is we've narrowed this. We have solved so many problems, but like Edmonds can't fucking keep it straight what they've even done. And that with like language that would be extremely more problematic in terms of it being broad and vague. When he started quoting that, I was like, all right, this is going great. Again, we got the Attorney General looking at people's medical records. We're quoting like an extremely overly broad old definition that was in the bill that like for sure is going to catch people in First Amendment protected activity. Like, what else does Senator Edmonds have to say in defense of this bill? Please, carry on.
I don't know. I either mentally made myself forget about this, or I just was not paying attention or something, because I don't remember.
Well, that's what I'm here for. I rewatched all of the.
I was just like,
yeah, I'm pretty sure
at
you
each
did text
at
that.
each turn, it's just like, oh my god, what they're saying is wrong and like so bad for them. But this is going great.
All right. Well, let's hear the next question.
If someone just shared information online and they just put it online, they didn't have any particular intended recipient, they just have some information that they shared online, is that considered promoting
I think that we're trying
or
to
substantially facilitating?
I think we're trying to make a statement to those that are providing drugs and access to those drugs in our state. We're trying to say those out of state, both physicians and pharmaceuticals, those products are not welcome in our state.
But could someone who shares information online be considered to be promoting, thereby substantially facilitating?
If they, again, I think I don't know that I can go through every supposition that you could make today.
It seems like it could include a lot of people, even someone as simple as someone who's just sharing information online.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't think I could go through every supposition. I mean, what is this? Are we just trying to figure out, like,
what the
how
bill
could
does?
this law be used? Those are questions clearly that are not appropriate. Yeah, that's a problem here. We do need to kind of go through every supposition of what your vague, broad bill that you don't understand clearly at all.
It was a diplomatic way of saying something similar to Ventrella had said on the other side, where it was like, well, respectfully, this ain't my problem, rep or
That's
something.
right.
But
We
that's
just make the
basically
laws.
a diplomatic
We don't
way
need to know what the fuck they say.
I just can't believe
We can't control if people bring frivolous lawsuit. Remember all of that, which, like, of course, this legislative session has been
it's not a frivolous
largely.
lawsuit. It would have been if it
That's
was.
right. Like, if you create the cause of action, it is by definition not frivolous.
Well,
That
to
should
that
have
point,
reminded me I need to take some Tylenol to prepare for this.
Nope, just drink some wine. All right, let's get through this bill.
all right, we have one more asked and answered.
Why does the bill have a minimum requirement of $100,000 in statutory damages? We
Regulate.
talk a lot in this body, especially this session, about frivolous lawsuits.
Mm-hmm.
Could this bill not encourage frivolous lawsuits for people who just want to get $100,000, no less than $100,000?
It's hard to think that the death of a child is a frivolous lawsuit.
My question is, with the monetary damages in place, if this is about life and protecting life, why is there a monetary damages amount in here?
Yeah, that's an excellent question.
Well, and I want to be clear that the amendment that Royce had proposed, that Edmonds objected to, was trying to get just some regular tort language in the bill about statutory damages, which, of course, the Senate rejected. So now, like Royce asking that very reasonable question, like, doesn't this seem like to be incentivizing people to bring a lawsuit when, as we've already established, they don't have to have causation or damages? Right. Edmonds' response is just like, it's a non-response, right? It's just like, we have values. Our values are important values.
Yeah, Senator Duplessis was the only one that asked any questions. And once he was done asking questions, then he went to the floor to really explain in more detail what his opposition to this bill was.
It really never ceases to amaze me that, we keep coming back year after year and having the same debates. This bill is pretty horrific, in my opinion. We already have the most restrictive laws on the books as it relates to abortion. And the question that I am just struggling with is, why do we continue to come back year after year and find more ways to try to limit women's autonomy, to try to limit women's health care, and to try to exercise control over women's decision-making as it relates to their health care? There's literally nothing this bill is going to do other than send the same messages that we can always send. We don't want healthcare professionals moving to the state of Louisiana. In fact, we want them moving out. We don't want young people moving to the state of Louisiana. We want them moving out, and that's what's happening. So we're following along the same trend under the saying that this is about protecting and preserving life. I attended a funeral for a 9-year-old girl named Leilani Brooks. Leilani Brooks was shot in the head by stray bullets. It made me think about what we're doing in this state to try to truly protect life. I brought legislation a few years ago to try to create an Office of Gun Violence Prevention, to stop the tragedies, to protect the life of our young people. And I don't think I got any support from Right to Life on that bill. Year after year, after these organizations have gotten everything that they've wanted, they got Roe overturned, trigger laws take effect, don't even think about getting an abortion in the state of Louisiana. Here again, we have to send another message, because that's what Senator Edmonds just said this bill is all about, is just to send a message. We're sending a message, all right, because this bill is not protecting anyone. And Right to Life does not speak for me or my district, that here we are again debating an issue that I thought we had already debated. But I guess we got to clarify the law. And I guess next year we'll have to find another bill to clarify and another bill to clarify. When is enough enough? When are we going to realize that these bills cause actual harm? If Right to Life wants to work on protecting life, I got some ways you can do it. This ain't it.
Damn.
Preach.
I mean, honestly, he should have taken the mic off of the podium and just dropped it on the fucking marble floor.
For sure.
Yeah, no doubt. At the point of, laws that need to be clarified, like these are laws that they're resurrecting. It's not even, right? I mean, that is what they have said, right, about this specific law and about others. But like, no, these are ones that they're resurrecting. So like nothing needs to be clarified. These are this law has basically never been used. They wanted to drastically expand it. And luckily, cooler heads prevailed around there, including among Republicans, which really does need to be emphasized. And they were massively unsuccessful in doing that.
But you see, I think that's where there was such a desire for them to include other parties to be able to sue.
Yes,
and I don't think
of
that
course.
they're going to give up on that. I think that they're going to try to figure out ways to get around the little nuances of things we've pointed out to them, paternity and just all of these different other issues, but they want to utilize the law. They can't based on...
They want to weaponize the law.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But again, I don't think it is the women. And, just the language surrounding whenever discussing women who have opted to terminate their pregnancies, the abortion vulnerable woman, and they don't even know what they're thinking and talking.
So
and
fucking offensive.
I have no doubt that there are women who experience pressure or are, I mean, I still think back to the horrible situation that now Senator Presley's sister experienced. Again, her experience though was that should be criminal, right? But they conflate it and put it into other situations and say they're the same. It's not the same. It's absolutely not the same. What happened to her doesn't mean you get a controlled dangerous substance. Like, they keep using these issues. And again, they deliberately confuse people. And it's like, just win on the facts. They get so much pleasure out of just not winning.
The facts aren't on their side, though.
The facts are not on their side.
We obviously have been on the same side of several pieces of legislation over the years. And so we've collaborated together. We've supported everything that Star has worked on over the years. And Star has been extremely successful in getting legislation passed in the state that no one ever thought would get passed. In fact, the Emergency Contraception for Survivors bill, you didn't even think that bill was going to pass when we first discussed it. But I think this is really kind of the first time that you have ever been like super deep in the weeds with us on an abortion bill. And so just like top line, like what was that experience like for you? I know you talked a little bit already about the lack of professionalism, but I think it's important for people to understand. I'll say this. At the beginning of every legislative session, when I walk into that building, all of the other social justice advocates that, we know and we love and, we work with and we all support each other. And they're working on really hard issues too. They're working on gun violence. They're working on prison and criminal justice reform. They're working on addressing
LGBTQ, right?
Maternal health, right, exactly. Like the rights of queer and trans people. But when they see me, they cast their eyes down in this like pity. It's like, oh, poor Michelle.
It's so true. No, I mean, I was telling my dad, I mean, like, people know Michelle and I very well at the Capitol. Like, even people who we don't know like, at all. And there's like, we get all sorts of like sort of interesting reactions from people being like, oh, it's you guys. Just, I mean, from random people when we're outside smoking cigarettes to like every lawmaker that we run into just in the hall. So I am personally very amused by that. But like, yes, we are really used to being in that building in a way that like everyone feels is oppositional, right? Like,
and like it's very hard to get people who even are on our side to work with us. And I think,
and you are not. You're in that building in a space that you're often working with people, and so I think part of what Michelle's interested in hearing about, and so am I, is that like, for folks like you, when like all of a sudden you realize that like, oh wait, like this is not a normal space that we're in. Like these people are not like going to collaborate in good faith.
I guess I feel some level of guilt sometimes because we do have a lot of social justice organizations that come to me and want star support on things. And some, like vast majority of the time, it's just our capacity. Like, just trying to do the work and then go there. And then it's also just that emotional drain.
Absolutely.
But, we do try to stick very specifically when somebody can make the point to me how very clearly this affects sexual assault survivors. And obviously just abortion bans in general affect survivors regardless of if you're dealing with exceptions or not, because not everyone wants to disclose. But I think that getting in the weeds, just like people are saying in the country right now, this isn't normal. This isn't normal for people to be so. And what got me is just ignoring me. Like, I am not used to people who you ask them a question by text and they just disappear. And it was so unprofessional. And I will say, maybe they'll listen to this. I think that you have to own who you are. You have to own your beliefs, not walk away. And I think that if you feel that you can't just tell the truth and you can't be direct with people, then maybe it's not a bill you need to run. Because above all, people talk in that Capitol. Everyone knows which legislators people want to work with. They also know which lobbyists or advocates they want to work with. And I would say I pride myself on not being one that's considered hard to work with. And so for me, character, I cannot get past. And I think that was the part that was the most honestly hurtful, is that people who claim to really want to support women, want to support babies, like we're just outright lying about things and to my face or skirting around things. And I'm not used to that kind of behavior, even from people who I very much disagree with a lot of people. And, there's videos of me and on other bills where I'm like, we're going to be friends after I testify. Right now, we're disagreeing.
Right, but taking people to task.
But it's still professional. And we still, after it's done, I feel like when they look at y'all, me, this session, it was like, they see us as literally the devil to get into the Bible, and it just is like, we're people. We disagree. There's different philosophies, but I mean, they look like they just think that we have thorns coming out, and that translates into this just lack of respect. And I think it goes back to, not to get into another bill, but something Audrey pointed out when she was testifying for, House Bill 215, is that they grabbed her. It is a space that is honestly just outright crazy. And I mean, it is very weird for me. And I've told people this before, when I went to Catholic high school, I was vice president of the pro-life club. I mean, there are pictures, it was there. And when I went to college, I started to talk to people, listen to people. When I started to volunteer back when we were the Rape Crisis Center. And then also when I ran for office, the stories. And this was all before, Dobbs overturned Roe. And I'll never forget just some of the stories of women who wanted pregnancies. And there was this one woman who her husband died and she had gotten pregnant, had another son, found out she had a cancer, like some kind of brain cancer, and they would not do chemo on her while she was pregnant. So this child, who her husband has since died, she found out like she was pregnant, but then she only has her 7-year-old son. She made the decision to get an abortion because she felt she needed to, her child needed a parent. Right. And it's just like, these are the things where people try to dance around the law. Oh, well, a life threat. No, she's not dying. She's not dying yet. But by not getting this treatment, she could die. Yeah. And so that's where it's like, when you meet real people who have these experiences, I just don't understand how you don't have some sort of empathy and compassion to where, you know, yeah, don't get an abortion. Do everything you can to advocate for policies that we know will actually truly prevent abortions, but also be respectful that not everyone has your religious beliefs. Right. And getting into the weeds of it, I just saw this level of disrespect and unprofessionalism that I've never seen before, honestly.
The sort of amazing thing too, Morgan, is that, like, because Michelle and I are like a decade into this, then we actually get a lot of respect around there. Mm-hmm.
Well, because
it's mostly behind the scenes.
No, it is.
No, but I'm telling you, I mean, like, that's those are the split screens, right? Is that, like, you're like, this is not normal. I've never seen anything like this. And I'm like, no, I mean, like, in 10 years, like, we have made so much progress. Like, people believe what we have to say and think our analysis is actually
and
correct.
Rely on us. Yeah, they do rely. I mean, you know, the people that are willing to listen, like, they do rely on us.
Which is just insane. Both of those things are true at the same time, and it just shows how different it is than most issues around there.
Like, obviously, we would not keep going back to the Capitol and putting ourselves through this if, like, we didn't really believe that we were right, you know?
Well, and not just that we were, but that we are making a difference. You know?
That's true.
I mean, they're not going to go out and look for the answers, the right answers. They're just going to believe what they're told. Mm-hmm. And I think that, you know,
you have to shove it down their throat.
going to the Capitol sometimes, even though I really don't want to, because it just seems pointless. Like, you do have to get yourself in a frame of reference. But for Rep. Boyd's bill, it was like, I went there because even if I know the outcome, what we're doing matters. And we need to continue to lay the foundation so that way one day, maybe next year, we'll get a switched vote. I don't believe that we're going to really change minds, but there are people who I think have compassion and empathy, and they just need to meet the right person in one day, you know. But we also have to just set times like this podcast is important for future generations. I mean, we need to do all that we can.
Oral history.
It is oral history.
Of the fuckery.
Yes.
Morgan, thank you so much for being here. This was a pleasure. I'm glad that we were able to translate some of our conversation via text message into our podcast.
Thank you so much. I love the podcast. Keep doing what you all are doing because, again, I think that, you know, there is a certain amount of privilege that comes from being there. Also, a certain amount of trauma but I think being able to really highlight certain things that are being said that have not been interpreted through reporters and all is very critical. And, you know, we need to keep doing this. We need to keep pushing back, and hopefully everyone will really get involved because it is hard to go to such a crazy place. But when people show up and, you know, no form letters to email legislators, write an email, call, like, that makes a difference, even if they don't always agree. So thank you for having me on.
All right, Ellie, what do the listeners need to do?
I'm so tired.
Okay.
Now, they need to write, they need to review, they need to subscribe. I think that's it, right? Review, subscribe. And also, send us, we've gotten away from sending us little voice memos of your seriously moments or other things that we should know about.
That's right. Next week, we are going to have another special guest on, and then We are going to go on a little bit of a break after that.
Hallelujah, as they say at the legislature.
We might have a couple of bonus episodes that we drop over the course of the break. We're working on that. But yeah, we need a little break. Not from y'all, but from just thinking about these idiots. So we will talk to y'all next week.
Thanks, everybody.
Seriously is presented by Lift Louisiana, a nonprofit organization advocating for reproductive health rights and justice.